1:10 p.m., the 12th of June, 2025. Ahmedabad's afternoon sun bore down on the tarmac as AI171 prepared for its scheduled flight to London Gatwick. Everything appeared routine, almost boringly so. The pilots passed their breathalyzer test at 11:25 a.m., both clean. Flight logs showed neither had flown in the past 24 hours. Well-rested, alert, and certified. They moved to the boarding gate by 12:30, where pre-flight checks began. Visibility, clear. Weather, perfect. Wind, calm. The aircraft itself, a Boeing 787, was loaded with 230 passengers, 12 crew members, and 54,000 liters of fuel. Still, it weighed well under its maximum takeoff limit. There was no dangerous cargo on board, no unusual warnings. Just another ordinary day for AI171. But how often do disasters begin with the ordinary? Have you ever wondered how many catastrophes masquerade as routine before they strike? At exactly 1:18 p.m., AI171 taxied out from its parking at Bay 34. Every system checked green. Takeoff clearance from runway 23 was granted moments later. By 1:37 p.m., the massive jet lifted gracefully into the sky. For those watching, it was textbook until everything unraveled in seconds. Doesn't it chill you to realize how thin the line is between routine and catastrophe?
If you're fascinated by the untold stories behind aviation disasters and black box revelations, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the sky's darkest mysteries.
At precisely 1:38 p.m. and 42 seconds, AI171 hit its maximum recorded airspeed, 180 knots, and then the impossible. The enhanced airborne flight recorder showed both engines' fuel supply was manually cut off. The fuel cutoff switches, located between the pilots, flipped from run to cutoff, both simultaneously, within a single second. These switches are guarded, spring-loaded, requiring deliberate action. They are designed for emergencies like post-landing shutdown or mid-air fires. Could it really happen by accident? Do you think such precision failures are mere coincidence? The engines began losing power instantly. The cockpit voice recorder captured the chilling exchange. One pilot asked the other, "Why did you cut off?" The stunned reply, "I didn't." Within seconds, just 5 of them, both engines dropped below idle. The emergency RAT hydraulic system kicked in. The pilots fought with everything they had. How do you react when your world starts falling apart in seconds? Would you freeze or fight? At 1:38 and 52 seconds p.m., the crew flipped the fuel cutoff switch for engine 1 back to run. 4 seconds later, engine 2's switch followed. This action triggered the FADEC system's auto-restart protocol. Both engines began reignition. Exhaust gas temperatures climbed. Engine 1 showed signs of life, turbines spinning back. But engine 2 kept losing power. Recovery on one engine could have saved them if they had just a few hundred more meters of altitude. Have you ever considered how fragile survival is hanging on mere meters and seconds? But AI171 had neither altitude nor time. At 1:39 and 5 seconds p.m., the pilots sent out a desperate "Mayday, Mayday" call. 6 seconds later, at 1:39 and 11 seconds p.m., the flight recorder went silent. AI171 plunged a fireball hurtling earthward. All 270 souls aboard perished. The worst aviation disaster in India's history. Does knowing this make you feel anger, fear, or just helplessness? 1 month later, the government broke its silence. No press conference, no questions, only a dry, preliminary report. Instead of answers, it fueled a storm of rumors and theories. Most haunting of them all, who or what really cut the engine's fuel supply? Isn't it strange how silence often screams louder than words? The official report dropped like a stone in a lake. No ripples, no explanations, just a sterile document that raised more questions than it answered. In a world desperate for clarity, silence breeds suspicion. The preliminary findings confirm the obvious. No fuel contamination, flaps set correctly at 5 degrees, landing gear retracted as per standard takeoff, no bird strike, no adverse weather. The pilots were fully certified, medically fit, and highly experienced on the Boeing 787. Everything checked out. Everything. Except the inexplicable fuel cutoff. Don't you find it unsettling when a report lists everything that didn't go wrong yet never addresses what actually did? The switch that stopped both engines mid-air isn't a toy. It's guarded, requires deliberate unlocking and movement impossible to flip by accident. The cockpit voice recorder captures raw confusion. One pilot's shocked question, the other's panicked denial. And yet, without hesitation, some voices in Western media labeled it pilot error, as if defaulting to human fault saves face for everyone else. Isn't it disturbingly convenient to blame the dead those who can no longer defend themselves? The haunting echoes of past cover-ups swirled in the air. Like the Boeing 737 MAX scandal, remember MCAS? The lethal software flaw Boeing hid until a second crash forced the truth into the open. Could history be repeating itself? Is it possible we are once again watching a tragedy being quietly swept under the rug? How many times does the world need to be taught the same brutal lesson? Curiously, despite the gravity of AI171's crash, the preliminary report recommended no action for the Boeing 787 fleet. No mandatory checks. No warnings to operators. Just a passive acknowledgement that, at this stage of investigation, there are no recommended actions. A phrase that feels less like caution and more like corporate deflection. Do you think such calculated passivity signals confidence or quiet panic behind closed doors? For those who dared to read between the lines, a chilling realization set in. The aircraft had arrived in Ahmedabad the previous night as AI-432. During that flight, a stabilizer position sensor fault was reported. Though maintenance claimed to have fixed it, one can't help but wonder if one sensor can fail, why not another? Or a switch? Doesn't it make you question whether fixed always means safe? Then came the most damning revelation buried deep within aviation safety archives. A 2018 FAA Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin. It warned of fuel control switches installed with a disabled locking feature on Boeing 737 models, the very same switches later confirmed to be used on the 787 series. If the locking failed, the switch could accidentally move between positions without deliberate action. In simpler terms, the engines could shut down mid-flight due to an unforeseen malfunction. Imagine that. A multi-billion-dollar aircraft brought down by a tiny overlooked feature. How does that make you feel about the safety of the planes you trust your life with? But Boeing didn't issue a global recall. No forced inspections, just an advisory. You may want to check this. Optional, not mandatory, because mandatory recalls hurt stock prices. Optional advisories? They hurt no one until a plane crashes. Have you ever wondered how often companies hide behind the word advisory to dodge accountability? Air India, already battling its internal chaos, did not check the fuel switches. They replaced other parts' throttle controls, even engines but not the switches. Nobody enforced it. And now, AI171 lay in ashes. Does this make you question whether negligence is just incompetence or something far worse? Still, pointing fingers at pilots is easier. Human error sells headlines and calms nervous shareholders. Even if cockpit associations in India began voicing concerns about the investigation's secrecy and its seemingly biased narrative, was the real cause ignored in the rush to find a scapegoat? Are we seeing history rewritten before our eyes with the dead as the convenient villains? This isn't to say pilot error is impossible. We've seen tragedies born from human mistakes like the CDS Bipin Rawat chopper crash, where human error emerged as a likely cause within 24 hours. But what matters is evidence, not assumptions. Are we, yet again, looking for a quick answer instead of the right one? Boeing's reputation, already battered, teeters on the brink. But in aviation, reputation can be repaired. Lives cannot. Which raises the question, are we prioritizing profit over passengers? Is this calculated silence a quiet cover-up waiting for the next disaster to explode? In aviation, every switch, every sensor, every circuit is supposed to serve as a silent guardian, a part of a meticulously crafted system built on the bones of past tragedies. But when these guardians fail, the question isn't just how, it's why they were allowed to fail at all. And with AI171, the focus zeroes in on one overlooked piece of hardware, the fuel control switch. Do you ever wonder how a single unnoticed flaw can unravel an entire system designed for perfection? Let's rewind to the 17th of December, 2018. The FAA, the highest aviation authority, issued a special bulletin. It warned operators of Boeing 737s that some fuel control switches were installed with their locking features disengaged. The consequence? The switches could be moved accidentally during flight, cutting fuel and shutting down engines. You didn't need to be reckless. You didn't need to mean it. The flaw could trigger a catastrophe on its own. Isn't it terrifying how, in such a high-stakes industry, might happen is all it takes for did happen to come true? This wasn't an obscure footnote. The bulletin clearly listed that the same switches were used on Boeing 787s. Airlines were advised to inspect them, not required, not enforced. Because making it mandatory might have sounded an alarm Boeing wasn't ready to face. Advisories give corporations the luxury of plausible deniability. We told you. But did they really warn us? How often does soft language serve as a shield against hard consequences? And Boeing? Their response was classic corporate maneuvering. No urgent alerts, no sweeping recalls. Just a whisper to airlines, take a look if you feel like it. The perfect loophole. Now, in the aftermath of AI171's fireball descent, Boeing could always say, "We warned them." But if a whisper in a hurricane counts as a warning, what does that say about accountability? Isn't it disturbing when responsibility is written in fine print? Air India, weighed down by its own financial and operational chaos, never conducted that check on AI171's fuel switches. They replaced other components, even major ones like throttle controls and engines, but not the switches. And nobody asked why until it was too late. Can we really call it a coincidence when oversight always seems to favor cost-cutting over caution? The pattern is hard to ignore. Boeing's past is littered with hushed warnings and public denials. Remember the 737 MAX scandal? The MCAS software flaw that Boeing knew about but chose to hide until it killed hundreds? The eerie echoes are impossible to dismiss. Are we seeing a rerun of a nightmare we thought ended years ago? Or have we been lulled into forgetting just how dangerous silence can be? Now, the pilot associations of India are raising their voices. They accuse investigators of keeping them out of the loop, of leaking reports that subtly push the pilot error narrative while ignoring hardware or system faults. It's a chilling déjà vu. Have you ever noticed how quickly blame is assigned to the voiceless and how slow the truth is to surface when it points to billion-dollar giants? The preliminary report states there was no evidence of sabotage, no dangerous cargo, no weather anomalies. The plane wasn't overweight. The pilots were healthy and experienced. If all standard failure points are ruled out, why isn't the most glaring possibility a hardware fault under the microscope? Why does the official story seem so eager to close the case before the investigation truly begins? Isn't it odd how questions that matter most are the ones left unanswered? Of course, there's always the possibility of pilot error, and no one's denying it outright. But when the circumstances defy logic, when switches move by themselves within a second, shouldn't that prompt a deeper look, not a convenient verdict? Are we letting our fear of corporate backlash overshadow our duty to uncover the truth? Boeing's track record doesn't inspire confidence. The 737 MAX debacle exposed how one faulty sensor of $40 part could doom a state-of-the-art jetliner. Could a simple switch ignored, unchecked, bring down a Boeing 787 in the same fashion? If this scares you, it should. Because it means this isn't just about AI171. It's about every flight, every passenger, every time you trust your life to a system that might be hiding fatal flaws. Have we become too numb to the idea that disaster can come from the smallest overlooked detail? The preliminary report's casual dismissal of the switch issue feels more than careless, it feels calculated. Like a quiet effort to control the narrative before public scrutiny catches up. Is this Boeing's silent strategy all over again? And if so, how long before silence costs another 270 lives or more? We're not saying the pilots are innocent. We're not saying the system failed alone. We're saying we don't know, and pretending we do is dangerous. Until every switch is tested, every software glitch examined, every mechanical failure ruled out, every possibility challenged, AI171's 270 souls won't rest. Shouldn't their story, their last flight, demand better from all of us? The story of AI171 isn't just a tragedy. It's a brutal reminder that in aviation, trust is everything, and trust is built on truth. Every switch, every system, every human in the cockpit forms an unbroken chain that holds hundreds of lives aloft. But when that chain is corroded by negligence, concealed flaws, or silent cover-ups, disaster becomes inevitable. And when the voices of the dead are drowned out by the hum of corporate spin, who stands to speak for them? Maybe it was a pilot's mistake. Maybe it was a mechanical fault. Maybe it was something darker. But certainty demands investigation, not insinuation. The temptation to scapegoat to find a quick, easy answer must never override the duty to search for the real one. Because in aviation, shortcuts in truth are shortcuts to tragedy. As the embers of AI171 cool, we're left with haunting questions. Will this be another chapter in Boeing's history of silent scandals? Or will this mark a turning point, where accountability finally outweighs arrogance? The answer, like the truth, is waiting. But how long will we wait, and how many lives will it cost us next time?